Bruce and I worked on that.
Oh.
Get John out of hospital.
Really?
Yeah, that's waiting. I said, oh, I'm good. All the
Anything
traffic.
going on there?
Yeah, we're working.
Same deal as.
I've got 7 o'clock.
Call the City of Staples City Council meeting to order. Start the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. We'll start right away with the approval of tonight's agenda. Motion by Roy, second by Mary. Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 3 is to approve our consent calendar, which is minutes of the previous meeting and payment of bills.
So moved. Second.
Motion by John, second by Doug. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is to open or hold a public hearing to review the draft of the Wellhead Protection Plan, Part 2. Open that public hearing, and I don't know if
Well, Scott, you want to give everybody a little background, introduce Mark?
Mark is with Stantec. He put the plan together. This plan is a requirement that we have. Its purpose is to, basically is to protect our source water, meaning in particular our wells. And we have to have a plan in place, and Mark has helped us write it. And I'll let him take it from here and explain what it's all about.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Scott said, this plan is a requirement for all public water suppliers in Minnesota that use wells for their water supply system. This was part of the EPA Safe Drinking Water Act amendment in the 1986 or 87, I believe. And in Minnesota, it's overseen by the Minnesota Department of Health, and their rules were finalized in 1997. So it's been a pretty long process for these plans, and they've been going now for several years. Staples actually does have a plan in place. It was originally created and approved in 2011. The plan must be updated every 10 years, so this is your first 10-year amendment of your original plan. Now, I believe Scott passed out a map to you that shows the boundary of the drinking water management area. Your plan is a little unique in that your area hasn't changed at all since the plan that was done 10 years ago. Usually we do see some slight changes to those boundaries, but yours didn't change at all just because your well usage has been pretty consistent over the past decade. I'll explain what you're seeing on the map there. You can see the 3 city wells, wells 3, 4, and 5. Those are surrounded by a red line. We call that the emergency response area. That's a 1-year time of travel. So anything in the aquifer within that area can be expected to be pulled into your wells within 1 year. There's a blue line, which is kind of a larger area. That's called the wellhead management area or wellhead protection area. That's a 10-year time of travel. So basically anything within the aquifer, within that blue line, will be pulled into your wells within 10 years. Now there's an outer blue line, a thick blue line. We call that the drinking water supply management area. So that's just a representation of that wellhead protection area using roadways, parcel boundaries, things that you can identify on the surface, because that light blue line, you just can't identify that on the land surface. So it's much more easy to manage based on parcels and roadway boundaries. So that's called your drinking water management area. And that's the area that needs to be managed as part of this planning process. A couple other things to notice on the map. There's different shades of color. those represent the vulnerability of the aquifer that supplies your wells. There's two different shades. The yellow is moderately vulnerable, whereas the red area is highly vulnerable. Basically what that means is if there's anything at the land surface that's going to infiltrate to your aquifer, it kind of indicates how quickly it can get down to the aquifer. In that yellow area, there's some materials that can impede vertical infiltration, so that's considered moderate vulnerability. Whereas in the red areas, it's mostly just sand and gravel. So anything that spills at the land surface can likely get to your wells within a fairly quick time. So that's something to identify as part of the process to see just how vulnerable your wells are and how vulnerable your aquifers are. Now, for this part of the process, is we had to identify potential sources of contamination that could impact that aquifer. As part of the process, we identified 34 other wells within this area. There was 2 sites that had above ground storage tanks, 17 sites with underground storage tanks. We also identified 13 hazardous waste generators within this area. And we also identified 24 former spill or leak sites that have occurred over time within this area. So most of those are no longer considered active sites of contamination, but there's something to keep an eye on just because if contamination does show up in a well, you kind of have an idea maybe where it came from based on its makeup and its location. The next part of the process was to develop a management plan to try to mitigate or reduce any risks of contamination to your wells. The overall goal is to maintain the existing water quality in your wells and prevent contamination from reaching the aquifer. The plan has 13 total objectives, of which there's 20 different action items. Those are to be carried over the 10-year life of this plan. Those action items include management of other wells and other potential contamination sources, with particular emphasis on sealing any unused wells that are in that area, because any unused wells are required by well code to be sealed. And also there's public education efforts involved in the management plan to get the public aware of what they can do on their properties to reduce the risks of contamination to the aquifer. Also incorporating wellhead protection as a consideration in any land use planning efforts that are going on in the area. And then finally, collection of other data that can help to better define the aquifer vulnerability. One thing that was identified in part of this plan, we did show the vulnerability of the aquifer on that map, but there's not a lot of good data that shows how vulnerable the aquifer is. So the Department of Health would like some additional data collected, usually water quality samples and test borings if possible, if anything's drilled in the future, just to help better define that vulnerability. So the next step of the process, there was a 60-day local government review of this plan that is now completed, and I don't believe Scott received any comments from local units of government. So after tonight, the next step of the process will be to submit this plan to the Department of Health for a 90-day review and approval process. Once the plan is approved, then you have 60 days to begin implementation of your amended plan. As I said, you already have an active plan in place, and this plan will take over once it's been approved. So that's a quick rundown of what your plan entails. If you got any questions, I'm happy to help answer.
Any questions for Mark?
I guess I'd have one question. My name is Doug Case, I'm council member, and my question is on this map where you have the 2 red marks indicating potential sites that could cause contamination. That old box factory site west of Staples, is that considered, or do you know anything about that, or?
I guess I'm not personally aware of it. We identified what was in the state's database, so if there's anything in addition to what's in the state's database, we can account for it. If it's inside that DWSMA line, that we call it the Drinking Water Supply Management Area line, we try to put it in the inventory, whereas if it's outside, it's not required as part of the inventory. So I don't know if it's inside or outside.
My understanding is that, well, I know the state didn't excavate there because of pollutants in the ground. Penta, I guess, was the chemical. And when they redid the highway, they actually moved the highway to the north to avoid that site. And that's just within probably a half a mile or so of our city limits. I don't know, but it wasn't marked on here, and I just was curious if that isn't something that's known about, or,
I think it's because it's outside of that, the Kenmore area,
Is that it?
you know, and it's not a known leak site or contamination site.
okay. It was when they moved the highway, I guess.
Well, no, actually, the story behind that is BNSF would not allow MnDOT to do soil borings on that property, so they just avoided it entirely, just because of the, you know, I guess the folklore surrounding that, but, and I don't doubt that there's something under there, I'm not saying that, but.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think we're pretty easy, Mark.
Okay.
I don't know if you,
We don't need any action, do we?
I don't think so.
No, I think, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, basically our goal tonight was to have a public hearing on this, and then it'll go on to the state for their review.
That's correct, yes.
yeah. Well, I guess if there's no other questions or comments, close the
Thanks,
public
Mark.
hearing.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And then, just good, we don't need to take any action then? So with that, well, I gotta find my agenda, 'cause I've got lots of papers here. And we'll move on then to item number 5. And that's to consider approval of raffle permit for Knights of Columbus 1803 on August 21st at Sacred Heart School.
Second.
A motion by Ron, second by Doug. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carried. Item 6 is to consider approval of resolution 1874, and that's accepting some donations. I believe that was from the Relief Association, if I remember right.
Relief Association, and then there's also a $500 donation from Lakewood for the bike rodeo added to the resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Mary and second by Roy to approve resolution 1874. Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7 is to consider approval of resolution 1875, and that's approving the master partnership contract with MnDOT.
In your packet, there's a copy of the master partnership contract. We've been doing these in 5-year increments for a while. Basically establishes and kind of lays out the parameters for us doing work for MnDOT or MnDOT doing work for us. It's not specific to any task necessarily, but something, I don't know how long MnDOT's been doing it, but I think this is probably the 3rd time that we've approved it.
I'll move resolution 1875.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ron, second by John. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Moves us to committee reports. We have 2. We'll start with Public Works. Scott?
Okay, citywide cleanup, it will be on May 20th, that's Friday of next week. Assume it'll go smooth. We advertised it in the newsletter, and we have staff ready, and I think it'll go a little better than last year. Next item is Airview Drive. We've had several requests to move forward with a paving project. I think before even I arrived that was was kind of on the radar. We've had several people request it, nobody's, we haven't had anybody petition, but we don't necessarily need that. The council can just make the decision to move ahead with paving that part. But with that being said, that the property owners will be assessed for paving that. There's one homeowner on the corner has requested, and several of the residents in the apartment building. I'm sorry, I forget the name of it. It's on the northeast end.
Oh, Stable Square.
Yeah, Stable Square. That was the most recent one that I've gotten. So, that being said, the commission has recommended that we move forward with a paving project for Airview Drive.
Want to do that now?
You want action?
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion by Roy and second by Ron. Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, we received a request for forgiveness on a sewer portion of the bill, which it's pretty typical. The property owner had an underground leak where the water came out of the meter or through the meter, but did not go in the sewer, so we did pass that. We gave an update on the treatment plant. We're down to the hitting punch list items. The plant, in the time that it's been operating, has been operating well. The guys have seemed to be figuring it out, haven't had too many bugs to work out. We still have not come to a resolution as far as the substantial completion date, but that is not affecting us. We are withholding payment, so we'll wait for more news. But as it stands, we are sticking with our date, and we are paying them in that way. One other item for action for you guys will be this agreement with Todd County for the 4th Street Northeast Water Sewer Project that we'll be doing in 2025. The agreement is fairly simple. We've looked at it, our engineer have looked at it, and it's a pretty standard agreement. I guess the way to maybe explain it the simplest is that we will manage the project, and then Todd County will reimburse us according to their schedule, which is attached with the agreement. It'll be things like, they'll do we will pay for all the water, sewer, storm sewer, or not, well, I shouldn't say storm sewer, water and sewer pipes. There's a ratio that we'll each pay for storm sewer. Anything that is in the Todd County right away as far as the water and sewer goes needs to be replaced new. We cannot refurbish anything, or we cannot leave anything in there, which is probably not something we would want to do anyway. So anyway, the commission recommended that we sign the agreement.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Roy, second by Mary. Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Just from a timeline standpoint, would be 2025 project basically at the earliest from the county standpoint. And we'll also need a lot of that time to make sure we get on any funding lists with the state and so forth. So out there a little ways, but we gotta get the ball rolling on it. Be ready.
Have to order a pipe now.
What's that?
They might have to order a pipe now.
Let's hope not.
Does that get assessed to the property owners then along that?
The mains don't, the sidewalk, concrete type stuff, there'll be a, cost share on that, property owners. But our policy is the storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water mains don't. Services, yes.
Okay, we updated the status of the AMI project. That's going fine. However, we are running into supply chain issues there. So there's certain things that were going to be here, should have been here this year, that we still will not see until fall. So we have enough, you know, our guys are able to install some meters here and there, so there's still enough for them to do until the other stuff arrives, but it is going to delay the project as a whole, but I mean, we're dealing with it just like everybody else is, so. I anticipate that we'll most likely be up and running completely by 2024. Steve Goggert retired. I believe that we announced that last month, and we did hire a replacement. Jake Williams, he comes from Henning. He's got a background in water and electric, and this position will be a little bit different in that he will be bouncing back and forth between the water and sewer departments and the electric department. So he's got a good background for that. He started last week. And then just gave an update on some of the spring and summer projects, a few electric projects that we have to finish up. The school, the elementary school is putting a little addition on to their kitchen and then doing some parking lot work. And, you know, we have some work around to work in their area that we have to get done, remove a cabinet and stuff out of their parking lot so they can finish that, get them a new service. So. Several new streets that will get overlaid, things like that. And that's all I've got for you.
Okay, any questions for Scott? All right, thank you. That'll take us to EDA.
Okay, so we met on April 22nd. Most of the meeting was spent going over the 5-year report that you each have in front of you. I'm actually gonna wait to go over that until I kind of do the rest of the update. So we did hold our annual meeting. We elected our officers, reviewed the annual report, approved the facilities use with CLC, similar to what you guys did, and then had discussion around the housing development agreements that you guys just approved, as well as, you know, potential future, hopefully future projects. We are in the process of updating the strategic plan, so we've been meeting separate from our regular meetings. And so we just kind of gave an update for those who maybe weren't there and to remind the date. As far as a director's report, talked about Voyager. They're at 28, actually I think 29 employees right now. Feedback has been very positive again, continues to be very positive, and actually moving some of their other positions to this area as they're finding workforce to be easier to garner in our community, as opposed to the Brandon facility. So that's really positive for us. So some of their IT hiring is being done over here, if you see them being posted out online. It is conference season, so attended the state's Brownfield and Beyond, went to Community Venture Network, Central Minnesota Housing Partnership, and others that are coming up. The EDM conference is coming up, so just kind of conference season, springtime. And then continuing on with our downtown revitalization plan, our next meeting is potentially being held this Thursday, and then talked about the Lakewood development and kind of what that looks like. If you aren't familiar, it's, you know, the 2 stories, 8 to 9 apartments, and then obviously space for their TCO there, and then 3 commercial spaces. And so we are looking for tenants, so if you have your feelers out, you know, if you know anybody who's looking at some space in our community, it's a great opportunity for a business to come in. I'll jump straight into the the 5-year report. I'm not going to go over it word for word with everyone, but I'm going to pull out some of the highlights. One of the things that we're doing differently this year, because it's a 5-year report, we want to have it printed and distributed out to all businesses in the community, and then also have it available for different shows, because we've had a lot of success over the last 5 years in the economic development world, as well as all of the community. So the first thing you have is a message from the president, our mission and vision, which was created with our strategic plan originally, about the community and about CETA. Strengths and opportunities that were identified when we did our strategic plan originally, which helped feed to why we worked on the things that we worked on. What our pillars are, thriving economy, social vibrancy, and residential growth. And there are examples on page 7, or descriptions of what each of those are to us. And then under thriving economy, it lists out different things that have happened between the 60 acres in the industrial park being shovel-ready, the numerous new businesses and industrial businesses that have come over the last 5 years. Really by the numbers is like the most eye-catching piece. Over 17 million of commercial investment in the community. That doesn't include, the sale transfer of businesses. That includes strictly, new development, new expansions or remodels done to buildings, but not necessarily the purchase of a building from one person to another, if that makes sense. So that's just new development that has happened in some level, whether it's remodel or not. Over 30 jobs, 30 businesses have either been retained or expanded. And then 151 building permits have been issued, and that's something we track in every year. And so that's kind of the compilation of the last 5 years. I'm going to jump to page 9, residential growth. So we know that we've had a lot going on in the housing area over the last 5 years. So a total of 147 units, or actually 150 plus units if you include the single family homes that have been built, 147 of multifamily. And we've been being recognized in the region and the state for our ability to attract that kind of development into a smaller rural community. And so we're definitely being noticed. The cleaning up blight was identified as important to us, us as the EDA in the community. So 14 blighted homes have been removed. Much of that has been done along Highway 10 and been assisted with some commercial development that has been put up there. The Frontier Townhomes, what were they called before? What were they called before?
Pine Avenue.
Pine Avenue, kind of had a little bit more rough reputation and weren't as well maintained. They had out-of-state owners. Central Minnesota Housing Partnership came in, purchased that, remodeled each of the units, and did some exterior work, and are operating it in-house as opposed, or, themselves as opposed to being a distant owner. So hoping that continues to be a positive for the community. And then, of course, the Paint the Town program, which is sunsetting as of last year. This year, we won't be doing it. But we were able to paint 23 homes, which has helped with the blight in the community as well. And then marketing the community. There's been a lot of work around Discover Staples with the city approving the lodging tax, with the LEAP marketing, and other things that we have done as a community. Not necessarily the EDA directly, but to make that happen. So we've had over 25 million in residential investment, 150 plus housing units, and then 414 building permits issued, meaning people have been doing improvements to their home. That doesn't include like roofing permits, because those don't necessarily have a value attached. So anything that increased value within that property is what's included in here. Under social vibrancy, we talk about it at the EDA as we understand that it's very critical for attraction of a workforce and maintaining attraction of businesses, maintaining the community as a place to live, work, play, and succeed. Therefore, although we don't necessarily have a direct effect on it, unless you're talking about the attraction of businesses, we do participate via sitting on boards or being involved in different projects. Assisted with the FEMA grant for the tornado shelter out at Dower Lake. Facilitated or worked with the trail study to identify routes for adding to our legacy trail. And then excuse me, researching sources for expanding the community center or fixing up the community center. A lot of that time for the social vibrancy side of it has been spent on the Bachelor Bluff Opera House over the years. I feel like there's a lot of time spent, and I still feel like we're still going to spend a lot of time on it, but it is one of those huge projects that would make a huge impact in our community, especially on the social vibrancy side. So that is highlighted in here as an EDA project that has been definitely a social vibrancy project. We do have the data that we carry forward every year. So our population, you can just kind of see Staples at a glance. The next page, you can see the 5-year change of that. There is one piece of data in here, and that's your trend average commute time at the bottom of page 12. Since 2019, we're showing 0. We are looking into that. We believe that there's something going on there, and so we reached out to Todd County Development Corp., who contracts with Golden Shovel, who contracts with Esri, which is where this data comes from, and they're going to get to the bottom of that. So when I get those numbers, that will change. But other than that, you can kind of see over since 2017, the change over those 5 years in those same categories as you see it at a glance. That's on page 12 and 13. And then since before 1996, data has been being tracked on total establishments, private establishments, total employees and private employees, et cetera. And I'm only showing from 96 to 2021 because that's all the data that I can show in a box and you can read. So I feel like that's a pretty good historical number. You can see this first page on 14 is Staples only. Our total establishments did go down. However, our private establishments went up slightly. Total establishments includes government and private, which we'd rather see private establishments. Our total employees are trending more towards the up scale. Of course, 2020 skews that a little bit, but it still has that trend line going up as well as the private establishments, and then private employees is trending up as well. On page 15, we show a analysis between the Todd County, you can see what Todd County is as far as their establishments overall, as well as their employees, and then Wadena County as well. And then we have kind of that Long Prairie versus Staples, so we can kind of see our two closest communities that are comparable to our community and kind of how we trend with them over the years as well. So we have Long Prairie and then also Wadena when we look at establishments and employees. The next page is really just who we are. It lists our board and the positions on there, and then a thank you and a call to reach out to us. This will be very similar, but likely in a much prettier format when it gets printed and sent out. I'm planning to send it to a professional and they'll put it into a booklet format. Any questions on any of that?
Great information, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to open forum. Buddy? Okay. Gerald, do you have a report?
I do. I just want to report to the council, we did have the closing for that lot on 2nd Street to Derek Holst Construction. And if you happen to drive by up there, there's footings poured. I think the plumbing is going in as we speak. And then that slab will be poured and you'll start to see the second house going up right there. Kind of working on a little project with Central Lakes College and the school district to clean out that ditch just west of Airport Road. Beaver are back in there and have that dammed up. And so we're kind of working with Todd County Ditch, Nancy Uhlenkamp and the college, and they're going to come up and present to the students and, provide them a little education on ditch law, what you can and can't do with both judicial and also county ditches. And then Todd County Soil and Water is gonna come just, kind of educate the students a little bit on wetlands before they get out in the real world and do something they shouldn't do. So John Molesky is excited about it. It's easy access, obviously, to the west campus. They can come in right on the backside and do that, and be a good, kind of a win-win, good for those of us that benefit from the ditch, and good for the students to be able to do a real-world project, and I think good for, wetland people and ditch people to have students going out into the workforce that understand some of that. So we're looking forward to meeting with the students and getting them going on that project. Voyager Industries. I'm gonna pass these out so everybody is kind of clear on what I want to talk about here. As Melissa has reported, Voyager is doing well, they're happy, and want to do some site work out there. I'll go ahead and share my screen here so that everybody can figure out how to do this. All right. So, they contacted us, kind of whose roads are those that, is the city gonna redo the roads? And what that kind of triggered was a deep dive into the early 1970s, trying to figure out, are those roads that go up there, number one? What doesn't show on this, but that does show on this, is the sewer and water mains actually follow that path up and around that pond. The majority of the research was kind of trying to answer the question, why would the city run the sewer and water like that, as opposed to going right down the road like every other street in town? Probably the only person that would recall that was Dick Donay, who's no longer with us. Development Corporation was involved. There was the EDA funding for the Airport Industrial Park project, which put the sewer and water in there. But we've looked at Development Corporation minutes, council minutes, there's just nothing, that would explain why. I'm guessing it was a requirement of the grant, that it had to be within so many feet of the benefiting business that helped get the grant. So anyway, fast forward to today, we've got the easterly, I'm gonna call it a driveway, because it's not, does not appear anywhere to be a dedicated roadway or anything like that. The easterly one has obviously had some maintenance over the years. The city crews have been plowing it up to the parking lot going back to when McCourtney Plastics built there during the winter. The westerly side, the driveway to nowhere, you don't have to spend too much time in civil engineering class to look at that and realize nothing has been done to that since the early 70s. Nature is taking it back to gravel. So basically the conversations with Voyager out there, hold on, let's figure out what our options are here. To me, it's not much of a public purpose expenditure for us to go up there and pave that. There are driveways that are going to benefit one single business. It's not technically a roadway. Yes, there is sewer and water underneath that, which we can retain a utility easement and be out nothing, and also get rid of the liability of having to maintain those roadways, both as far as, any kind of tarring, and also snow removal. So, I talked to Kurt, they are, they have a lot of ideas about what they want to do out there. Kurt Battles from the CFO from Voyager. But they obviously don't want to make a big investment if it's something that they don't have, some long-term interest in, being the underlying ground. We talked about the possibility of a lease of that property. Talking to Joe Kruger, city attorney, he said the easiest and cleanest way to do it would be to quitclaim deed the property and retain a utility easement for that sewer and water main out there. It's not, the property has no other use than being the driveways to what's now Voyager Industries. So I wanted to just kind of throw that concept out to the council. If we were gonna, decide to move forward with the possible, deeding over of the property and development of that utility easement, we would, it's a 2 ordinance reading process, just like we were gonna sell it. But what it does is it removes the city from having that, ongoing, cost and financial liability out there for paving and snow removal and everything else.
What happens when those have to be replaced? Those lines that are under the ground? When they get old and they have to be replaced, we would go in there and do that?
We'd have access to it. Yep.
Because it'd be easement.
The other piece to that would probably be to just go right down Prairie.
Just abandon those.
Not worry about it. Just go right down Prairie.
Is that an option that we probably would exercise then, you think, if that ever came? We would just go down
Well, it
and
would be
abandon those?
possible, it's all PVC pipe, so, and I'm not gonna say it's never gonna go bad, but, there's sewer and water, running in both, both of those legs, which could, I suppose turn into basically a service line, at some point, but, I think from where I sit, I don't really see a downside, by retaining a utility easement and, turn it over to them and they can pave the driveways and plow the snow and they're just looking for some certainty, as we go forward.
And they own all around that.
Inside and outside.
Yes. So they own the whole piece, that trapezoid thing.
And the original, the first time in any of the minutes that this property was really, was talked about, the Development Corporation received a 1-year option on 15.3 acres, which is the entire trapezoid. I can't find anything in the minutes where it turned into 14.2 in 2 different chunks that were ultimately sold to McCourtney.
Weird.
So that may remain an unsolved mystery. The number of people that were involved that are still around, that have any, ability to recall that is pretty small at this point. But they're looking at, they're wanting to do parking and storage area on the west side and pave, some employee parking and guest parking on the south side of the building, but it gets pretty tight, before they get to the property line there. That's kind of what triggered the whole, along with, who's responsible for maintaining the road.
So the property line goes all the way to the west there, I mean, to the,
Yeah, here, let me,
It's a black line.
yeah, okay.
Black line on here, right?
yeah. So, you'll note the unusual shape of this property. it just so happens that both sides of the property are parallel to what were runways at the time. You know, obviously, you know, our current runway over here is parallel to this line. The old crosswind runway is parallel here. In fact, it's kind of funny. This photo is not quite so much, but you can kind of see the line going through here. I think that crosswind runway was pulled out in the, like 1986, back when the joint airport zoning thing was going on. But you can see the, you know, the different line in the soil. You know, I suppose where there was gravel underneath the, you know, the old grass strip or something, but, so obviously that runway is not there anymore, but it was at the time that this property was carved out and sold to McCourtney. So the, you know, the other concern that I had initially was, you know, this stuff happens to be a part of the same parcel that the airport is on. And of course, dealing with anything airport is, you're following FAA's rules. But in our airport layout plan, you know, it clearly shows that this, you know, this little goofy piece right here is not part of the airport property as identified in ALP, so the, you know, FAA is not involved in that. So I guess I'm open to thoughts, ideas. If we, you know, if we don't want to go down the path of transferring that, the ownership of the property and retaining an easement, then we're going to need to do something different if we want them to take over the maintenance of that, the driveways and snow removal, you know, the lease or something. But I don't really see any, you know, any public benefit to us retaining ownership of that.
Yeah, I don't see any really other options that we really have that are any better. Or doesn't make sense for us to keep that and to keep maintaining it.
No, it seems.
Yeah, the big mystery to me is why in the world would we run the water and sewer that way?
Yeah. Well, you can't find any records on it. That's kind of weird too.
No. And the funny thing is the old Development Corporation records, Lampert Closey was the Development Corporation secretary during that whole time. And his minutes were way better than the council minutes as far as detail, you know, of what was talked about. But they didn't go into that.
Are you looking for something tonight, or were you just?
I get just a, you know, an indication of direction. You know, if the council, you know, wants to, you know, go forward with a deed and a utility easement, then I would, you know, have an ordinance drafted and put it on the agenda for a first reading at the
Need a
next
motion
meeting.
to do that? Just show
I don't think so.
it's-
No.
It's okay with me.
Consensus, yeah, I mean, I don't,
I can't see value hanging on.
no. I mean,
So down Prairie Avenue, there's no sewer and water in front of that?
No.
Well, it doesn't make it, I mean, it makes sense if you look at that over, but if something developed across the street, then you'd have to go extra distance to get there.
Yeah, I don't.
But okay. No, that sounds all right, just to go with the,
Easement.
yeah,
yeah. Go for it.
you learn something new every day.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the thing that just about gave me a stroke is I'd never gone, you know, and zoomed way out on this before and clicked on the identify parcel, and then I happened to click right in the middle of the runway, and that whole
Oh, sure.
goofy shaped deal lit up down there. I'm like, oh no, it
Yeah,
can't be part of the airport, you know?
yeah,
Because we've, I'm sure you all remember when we had to tear up the trail bed for Legacy Trail that was running along on the west side of Airport Road there. It was a non-aeronautical use of airport property, you know? And I always looked at it as city-owned property that had an airport on it, but the FAA and I have a little bit different, little different view of things. But yeah, that was back, we had to tear that out when we did that parallel taxiway years ago. And they wouldn't move forward with the taxiway project until that trail bed had literally, all the class 5 had been picked up. So it was picked up, a couple years later, we moved it over 20 feet into the road right away. And, I think is not nearly as nice of a trail
yeah.
as it would have been, right on the edge of the airport property, but. Anyway, so, yeah, that was a little bit spooky back when I clicked on that, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me, but it's not part of the airport property, so we're good to go.
So how did you find out that the water was running that way?
Oh, we knew the water was running there, I mean, we've known that, we've never understood why.
Okay.
But back, I don't know what it is now, 8 years ago or so, when we did the, increase that main for fire protection on the Stern expansion. Looking at the plans, it's like, why, I don't know. Still don't know. Probably never will. So, all right, well, I'll bring an ordinance, back for the next council meeting then. Continuing down my list here, we're doing interviews for utility billing clerk on Thursday. So hopefully we will have success there. Bike rodeo is Thursday night over in the community center parking lot. May 20th, Friday at 2 o'clock is our Arbor Day celebration event up at the Care Center. Mayor Etzler, I'm supposed to remind you that you have an obligation for that.
What day is that again?
May 20th, Friday, 2
Yep,
o'clock.
it's on my calendar. I
Before
don't
the
need it.
citywide cleanup.
Kevin made a special call to me just to make sure I reminded you. Citywide cleanup is later that day. And then just a quick update on the 3 houses slated for demo. We had to do asbestos inspections, which is a new requirement as of last summer. And one of the 3 does have some asbestos floor tiles. So we're working on trying to find somebody to get those out of there before we can demo it. So part of the problem there is there's so much other stuff in there that you have to move to get to the floor. But we'll get it figured out. Scott will probably go over there and move stuff. So, but otherwise, the other 2, Phil Birga is the award-winning contractor that gets to take those down. So I think he'll start in on the other ones as soon as he can. So that's all I have for tonight.
And does he haul everything away or he just takes them down?
No, he hauls it all the way, fills in the basement and.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ron, second by Roy to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, he started talking, I didn't know she started.
So did you talk to Al?
I did. We're in. We're gonna go over this weekend and check it out.
Yeah, I don't know, Andy and I have